welcome to this, what is really a special edition of Acting for Justice. My name is Jack Jezreel. I'm part of the leadership team, Just Faith Ministries, and I'm joined by my colleague, as you can see, Heidi Villaluz. She's our tonight's co-host, and we're delighted that you could join us. Just a quick word about our program tonight. Our speaker represents a Catholic organization and is speaking through the lens of that organization. But the reality to which he will speak impacts us all. And so all are welcome and encouraged to be here. My experience is that when Catholics and Presbyterians and Lutherans and Methodists and whoever else make our way to the work of love and justice, we almost immediately find vast common ground and ready partnership. So welcome to all. Let's begin our program this evening with prayer. These words come from the late Archbishop Dom Helder Camara, a champion of the poor in Brazil. This prayer can be found in the Catholic Relief Services prayer book entitled Prayer Without Borders. And this prayer is entitled, We Believe. So let us pray. I will not believe in the law of the strongest, in the language of guns, in the power of the powerful. I want to believe in the rights of all, in the open hand, in the strength of the nonviolent. I will not believe in race or riches, in privileges, in the established order. I want to believe that all human beings are human beings, and that the order of force and of injustice is a disorder. I will not believe that I don't have to concern myself with what happens far from here. I want to believe that the whole world is my home, the field that I sow, and that all reap what all have sown. I will not believe that I can combat oppression out there if I tolerate injustice here. I want to believe that what is right is the same here and there, and that I will not be free while even one human being is excluded. I will not believe that war and hunger are inevitable and that peace is inaccessible. I want to believe in the love of bare hands in peace on earth. I will not believe that any effort is in vain. I will not believe that the dream of human beings continues being only a dream and that death is the end. But I dare to believe in the dream of God, a new heaven, a new earth, where justice reigns. Amen. And now Heidi will share a few logistics about tonight's gathering.
Amen. Thank you, Jack, for that beautiful prayer. Welcome to everyone, those of you who have been with us and those of you who are coming new, most warm welcome to everyone. If you are unable to stay for the entirety of the evening, rest assured we are recording. And so just so you're all aware, we are currently recording, so we'll send that to you tomorrow, the next day at the latest. Also, if you'd like to share what we're talking about tonight, the training, please share it widely. And so feel free to use that recording and to bring others into the work that we're going to be doing tonight. We'll also invite you to drop questions into the chat for Chris for Q&A later on after the presentation and training, and we'll collect them as we go, but feel free to, as you have them, we won't be stopping for questions, and so go ahead and start dropping them in the chat. And to that end, we'll also keep everyone muted just because there's so many of us in the call right now, and so for ease of hearing and for gathering all those questions, we'll rely on the chat for everything. And finally, we thank everyone who's made to this evening possible with your donations and your ongoing donations. Just Faith Ministries is a 501c3 nonprofit, and the proceeds for tonight is going to be used for a special purpose, which we'll share later tonight in solidarity with people who are most struggling right now. And so it is my pleasure to turn it back to Jack, who will introduce our wonderful speaker for the evening.
Thanks, Heidi. Well, now it is my pleasure to introduce you to tonight's presenter, a friend of mine for a long time. Chris West has worked at Catholic Relief Services for 2 decades. As the senior trainer for chapter building, he works with dioceses and parishes to educate and engage Catholics in the work of CRS. Chris has over 25 years of experience in leadership development, training, and helping people of faith engage successfully in social mission. This includes skills and formation for building effective teams for social mission, and to advocate effectively for more just policies that impact the poor overseas, for example, reforming trade, foreign assistance, food aid, migration, the extractive industries, and others. Chris holds a BA in Human Services from Virginia Wesleyan College and a master's degree in political communication from the John Hopkins University. Chris, thank you for joining us. We're just delighted to have you with us. Thanks.
Thank you, Jack. And for folks who don't know, I first met Jack more than 2 decades ago in Colorado when I took a Just Faith course and was one of the first, well, I don't know if first, but early graduates of the Just Faith program, and went on to become not only a Catholic graduate from the Catholic Just Faith, but also the Ecumenical Just Faith. So I've done it more than once, like I imagine some of you might have. As we get started, I am going to be asking folks to put stuff in the chat. And so right now, I want you to just think for yourselves. If you could make one law, a law, and it has to be a law. It can't be something like everyone has to love each other, right? If you could make a law to make the world better, what would it be? Just take a second in your own mind, think about what that law would be. All right. Now, thinking about that law, I want you to go ahead and use the chat and put into the chat the broader issue you're addressing, right? Because a law is a specific way of doing stuff. My friend Jimmy Culpepper down from the Virginia Beach area says universal migration. What are other folks working on? A law against capital punishment, addressing poverty, addressing equality. Scott Cooper from, I believe, is that Scott from Washington State? No more than 5% of national budgets toward defense. Trying to address racism, universal health care, food insecurity, housing, equal treatment, fair and free education, food, shelter, medicine for all. Only one car per household, feeding everyone, a fair distribution of wealth. It's funny, my kids ask for that one a lot. I'm not sure what that is. No nuclear weapons, saving all life on the planet, where all nations have to do. Guaranteed minimum wage, global citizenship, reparations to Black and Indigenous. So there's a lot. So I actually made a really gross assumption going into that question here. My assumption was that you guys may think that the world's not working quite the way it should be. And I could have been wrong. You could have all been sitting there thinking, things are fine. I just want people to slow down on my street. But you guys are trying to tackle really big things. All right, so now I want to ask you why. What is the value that's underneath your desire to make a difference there? Why make housing affordable at all? What's the value there? What are you trying to see that's different here? Because Jesus, that's a value, right? That life is sacred. There's freedom to determine human dignity, belief in a just world. Dignity is coming back. Basic rights. What are basic human rights? Imagine a world where there are no disposable human beings. Trying to do the gospel message. Man, y'all are fast. This is great. If we really are created in God's own image and likeness, and each person is valued good and vital to our world, then how do we live that out? I love that. Trying to end the fear of others. Please do scroll through there. But as we think about this, I want to put this out there that the laws that we dream of reflect the world that we hope to create, right? One that is rooted in welfare of all, justice, dignity, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, the care of creation, the care of others, this idea of common good. But I think most of you would agree with me that if we looked around, we might suspect that the world is falling a little short of these ideals. Is that fair? All right. So then for me, the question becomes, how do we, as people of faith, respond, right? For centuries, the church, and by this I mean the little C church, all the churches, have stepped into the gap, not simply as a moral voice trying to dictate behavior, but as a force for concrete action, walking with the marginalized, advocating for change. Tonight, I want to do a little bit of exploring how we might be able to continue part of that mission in this time and place specifically. And we're going to be looking at some of the best practices of writing and calling our members of Congress to bring our values to bear on those who are making decisions that shape our country and our world. As Jack mentioned, and Heidi, my name is Chris West, and for the last 20 years, I've been working with communities throughout the country. I mentioned I'm a proud Just Faith graduate. What many of my friends on the call who happen to be Catholic may not know is even though I've been working for Catholic Relief Services for 20 years, I'm not. I am one of the ecumenical groups that have been involved with Just Faith from the early days. And it's really important to me that all of us can take the values that we have and put them into action in meaningful ways, and not just well, I love the prophets, you know, how they stand out there and they scream into the darkness sometimes. I once quoted the prophet Amos, who said, let justice roll down like rivers and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. And my father, who was a very practical guy, told me, yeah, it's one thing to say that, but it's very different. How are we going to build the infrastructure to make sure the waters of justice flow to where they need to go? That's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about writing and calling our members. I'll be using an active issue of critical importance that is actually impacting millions of people around the globe right now. But I want you to know that as we talk about the best practices of how to write and how to call our members of Congress to influence them, they can be used for any of the issues that we talked about, any of the issues in the chat. So while I'm going to be talking about an issue that Catholic Relief Services and other international NGOs are working on right now, please know that thinking about advocacy, the skills are the same. So before I go into this, I want to invite you into an experience that I had that in many ways helps shapes the way I think about advocacy and the work that I do around advocating for the global poor. Several years ago, if you can imagine a pre-COVID world, right? This is a long time ago. I had the privilege of leading a delegation of CRS, diocesan partners overseas to see our programming in Ethiopia and some other areas. Ethiopia is a diverse country. It's got a sizable Christian population, as well as a large Muslim population. And the majority of the places that we visited happened to be Islamic. But wherever we went, we were met and greeted with joy. We visited a village that hadn't had access to clean water, and the CRS project there used government funds in a food for work project to hire villagers to help cap a spring on top of a mountain and create that irrigation system down to the village to ensure that both the villagers and their livestock had access to clean water. This was a USAID funded program, USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, for those who don't know. And they had funded that effort, as they have done many, many, many kinds of projects all around the world in their 60 years. While CRS provided the technical assistance and supplied some of the materials for the build, the villagers who actually did the work gathered proudly to show off the new water system. And over again, we saw or heard the phrase, water is life. And it's that simple. We were able to bring clean water to an entire community. That's how they saw us, right? Americans who brought them clean water. And it wasn't just the infrastructure for the water, but we worked with the community to teach them how to maintain the system, how to organize around it so that they had people who would be teaching each other so that they weren't going to be reliant on us coming back to fix it if it ever broke it. In different communities, we saw shelter and livelihood programs. These are programs that not just offer a hand out, but a hand up, allowing people to generate income and become self-sufficient. And of course, wherever we went, there were the kids, right? Kids are always thrilled when people come in to see. They were mugging for the camera. They were insanely curious about these people who had come to see their community's work. And they loved to play. And while I was there, I noticed this little kiddo. And it was a different enough look that the child had that surprised me from the others. It's that mohawk, right? I'm used to the mohawk from the 80s back when I was in high school, and we're not going to go down that road anymore. But I was very curious because I wasn't expecting to see a mohawk in Ethiopia. I knew it was indigenous in the Americas, but I asked, and through a translator, I was told that it is tradition because so many children under the age of 5 died that the mothers would shave the heads like that so that when the angels came to take them, that they would have something to hold on to. I realized that it wasn't just about dignity. The work that we were doing is about life and death. Honestly, in these talks that I do, I try and stay away from big numbers because one, it's hard to get our minds around big numbers conceptually. Like this number here that you see on the screen, 200 million. Can any of us conceptually think about how big that is? You know how long a second is, right? If I count 60 seconds, I get to a minute. If I want to do 1,000,000 seconds, it's going to take me about 12 days to get there. 100 million seconds? A little over 3 years. 1,000,000,000 seconds? It's going to take me almost 32 years to get there. We're dealing with a federal deficit and a federal budget in the trillions of dollars. If I counted back-to-back seconds, a trillion of them, it would take me more than 31,710 years. And that's longer than human civilization. The second reason I often don't talk about them is because numbers aren't really the important thing. Of course, until they are. Because these aren't numbers, they're people. This is the number of people Catholic Relief Services alone, our programs touch on an annual basis. It's children, it's parents, grandparents, it's aunts and uncles, it's sisters and brothers. These are the lives that are touched, that are saved, that are protected through the support of Catholic Relief Services, the Universal Church. And we are just one of many, many NGOs out there, non-governmentals. We're not the only one, right? We've got lots of them doing it. You can pick your favorite flavor, whatever it is. It's World Vision, World Relief, CARE, Save the Children, Oxfam, Mercy Corps, Christian Aid. The list goes on and on. So when we think about that 200 million people that are touched, it's really multiplied out by all those organizations. And that's a lot of people that are served through international aid, that our tax dollars as Americans that we help. The entire international life-saving portion of the federal budget is less than 0.5%. Don't get me wrong, $60 billion sounds like a lot of money. And a billion here, a billion there, it begins to add up. But 60 billion is what the US gives around the world for life-saving humanitarian aid. And it's less than 0.5%. And those tax dollars, it's not just humanitarian aid that we're doing with it, although that matters. It's not just feeding poor people. It addresses issues such as introducing infectious disease prevention around the world, HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, reducing malaria, addressing maternal and child health issues, expanding access to clean water. It includes disaster response and recovery in both natural and man-made disasters. It supports refugees where people have been displaced and supports those who are displaced internally when the conflicts arise or disasters. It supports conflict prevention and peace-building work around the globe. It provides emergency food assistance. One of the programs CRS is working on in Ethiopia right now feeds 154,000 severely malnourished children on a regular basis. It reduces hunger and malnutrition. It supports farmers and improves climate-resilient agriculture. We're seeing all of that happen. But all of that has changed. When President Trump took office, the administration wanted to do a 90-day review of all foreign aid. All right, it's a pretty normal thing. It's kind of business as usual. We've seen every new administration do that. They wanted to say, hey, does our foreign, policy work align with the foreign aid that we're doing? What happened next was unprecedented in our 80-year history. They issued a stop work order for all U.S. aid that was happening around the globe. Not just for CRS, for all work happening around the globe. Just going to ask you to imagine, what do you think the implications are, the impact of a stop work order on global health, on the distribution of antiretroviral medication, or strengthening health systems to prevent disease outbreak, educating communities on sanitation? You know, we can imagine what the impact of a stop work order is for emergency food, but what about non-emergency food? What about that longer term development? What are implications if people can't get their crops into the ground at planting season? CRS had a program that was distributing tools and drought-resistant seeds to more than 10,000 farmers in Honduras this year. What happens when they don't get their crops into the ground? What happens when children don't receive education? We do basic literacy programs through USAID all over the globe. Well, CRS and other aid organizations panicked, as well you can imagine, and we began putting in requests for waivers for the programs that were most critical. Let us feed the people. Let us administer the medicine that we're doing. We've got food in warehouses that will rot. Let us distribute it. And we began receiving some waivers for some programs, but none of us have been able to access the funding to actually implement the programs because it costs money, right? A feeding program distributing food maybe 200 miles away from the warehouse, trying to get the trucks there. It takes gas, fuel, drivers, all of that. And we weren't able to access the money. And yesterday, this is even worse. We just got word that the Trump administration is terminating thousands of USAID foreign assistance grants and awards. This is according to the State Department. This move effectively guts America's ability to provide international life-saving humanitarian assistance around the globe. There are hundreds of millions of people around the world that receive life-saving aid and a hand up through the development work thanks to the generosity of the American people. And they're counting on us to keep our word on what we said we were going to do. However, Secretary of State Marco Rubio decided to eliminate 92% of USAID's grants. The State Department went on to cut an additional 4,100 grants. You know, grants around things like, I mentioned the peace building work or ensuring free and fair elections in authoritarian countries. Imagine that. This includes some of the programs that had already received waivers for being life-saving humanitarian assistance, including ones that provide HIV aid medication. They've now received termination notices. Folks have been asking the question, how much does the budget come from USAID? I assume you're asking about Catholic Relief Services. It's somewhere around 2/3 of it. It's not quite all USAID, but it's about 2/3 of government money, and 1/3 of it is through the generosity of the American people. So at the end of the day, whether you're a supporter of Catholic Relief Services or World Vision or CARE or Save the Children, or just an America that's going to intervene in a hurting world to be positive, we're in a crisis. The question is, if we're going to advocate for a better world, perhaps for our sisters and brothers around the world, the question then becomes, how do we do that? Margaret, that great question. That's one of the reasons why we're here. I'm here tonight to put a call out to everyone. So let me ask you this. I'm gonna stop the presentation for a second and just in the chat, if you want to make your voices heard, if you want to advocate with Congress, what are some ways that we can advocate for Congress to change laws? What are things that we could actually do? So when I call Diocese of these Catholics, we could do sit-ins, we could boycott, we could meet with our legislators, we could do phone calls, call our representatives, start a movement, write our Congress people. Margaret's asking, how much money do we need to raise every day? Margaret, I'm just afraid that charity is not going to be able to replace the amount of tax dollars that are lost. Call, vote people out of office, meet with the office. Eloise met with Senator Cornyn's office today. That's beautiful. Participate in congressional resource recesses. Ask bishops and other powerful people to put pressure on legislatures. Abby, great point, and good to see you here. Yes, all of these are great. These are great examples. So there are lots of ways people can advocate. You can do justice through lawsuits. There's suing. There's marching in the street. There's all these various forms and protests. And does anyone know which one is right? It's the one that works. That's the one that's the one. I don't know which one is right. I try and do them all. So for CRS, we are focused on legislative advocacy. We are trying to make sure that the decision makers hear our voice. And so we're using a couple of the following methods to do it. Writing to Congress, ignore the photo. You don't have to write in calligraphy. People use social media, calling their Congress people, things like that. All of these are good ways to try to get to our members of Congress. I love that Rob is going to be running for office. That is awesome, Rob. I will vote for. I don't know if you're in my district or not, but I'll vote for you. If you're on a call like this, it means you must care about people. So let me ask you this. How many of you really in your hearts believe that your voice matters, that you can influence politics? Can be hard to believe. Some people do. Yay, yay. I love the answers. Thank you, guys. Many of our fellow Americans don't. According to a Rasmussen study in 23, only 19% of US voters believe that the average member of Congress listen to the voice of the voters that they represent, right? We've actually worked with an organization called the Congressional Management Foundation. They look at all sorts of data. They survey Congress, and they've done this. And so some of my friends who have heard me before have seen this before. But this was an answer to the question, if your member of Congress hasn't already made up their mind on how they're going to vote, which of these has influence, right, on making them decide? And you can see that all of the ones in the box all have some influence. It's either a lot or some influence. And so that's a really good way to do. Again, there's no magic bullet here. The idea is that our voices do have matter, but we want to make sure that our voice, while it has some influence, it's not enough to change the tide. So we want to use our voice frequently and often and with lots of other people saying the same thing at the same time. Seth is asking, do letters from foreign agencies work? You'll see that one is listed right there underneath the box as foreign emails from messages. Yes, they do have an influence, but we're going to talk about how you could have a little bit more influence on that. So we're going to jump back here to the fact that our voice matters. I believe, and my friends who have been working with me for a long time have heard me say this, that we can make a difference. But if we really want to have our values influence Congress, no matter what church you're from, what background you're from, what issue you care about, a one-time thing isn't enough, right? We need to begin to build relationships with members of Congress. Now that seems a little weird. Like, I'm going to build a relationship with my member of Congress. One, I'm not a donor. How do I do that, right? So Kathleen is saying, my congressman has heard from me so many times. Kathleen, we're going to talk about getting to know the members of the staff too, because they have folks. Well, in any relationship, you need to get to know the people right. So if you're going to be effective in advocacy, I just want to say I'm starting here with the idea that you may be here for the first time and have never done advocacy before, and so you're starting brand new. I want to say you can do it. For those who've been doing it for a while, some of this will be a little remedial for you. But the first thing we want to do is begin to build a relationship with our member of Congress, right? If you don't know who your member of Congress is, Carmen, we're going to get to that in a second. If you don't know who your member of Congress is, you can use that QR code. It will link you to the CRS website, and we've got a Find My Member tool on there, and so you can look it up. I'm going to go ahead and assume that many of you actually know who your members of Congress are already, because it sounds like people are already meeting with legislators. Kathleen's congressman doesn't even reply anymore because he knows Kathleen. If you don't, go ahead and do it. But what we want to do is begin to get to know them. We want to explore their website, look at their press releases, read recent news articles. I follow them on their newsletters. I personally don't follow them on social media because I stay off of social media for my own mental health. But if you happen to be on social media, it's a good way to stay connected and follow them. So you could do that. So those are ways to begin to do that. I want to take 2 minutes here and encourage you to right now pick one of your members of Congress, go onto their website, and try and take a little bit of time getting to know them. If you don't, again, you can use the QR code to look it up. Find your member of Congress. Thank you there, Heidi, for throwing that in there. When we're on their websites, what might we look for? We might look for a couple different things that they can do. What's their personal background? Do they happen to be of the same faith background that you are? That could be a place. Where's their family from? Or did they grow up in the area? What are their priority issues? What committees are they on? What bills have they sponsored? So I want everyone to just take 2 minutes and go online and see what you can find. And as you begin to find something, consider what might you thank them for. And it doesn't have to be related to the issue you care about. If you are currently worried about homelessness in the community, if they haven't done anything on homelessness, that doesn't matter. Maybe they fixed the potholes in your community and you can thank them for that. Mike, the Speaker of the House is Congressman Johnson. You can check his website out and reach him there. So while people are researching, and I want you to start putting into the chat a couple things that you might begin to thank people for. Lynn, how do legislators make up their mind? I'm going to oversimplify it, but I see it as typically 3 ways. One is their party vote. In their parties, they're told how to vote. You want to run again, you want to be sponsored by the GOP or the Democrats, you're going to vote this way because our party's voting this way, and we're going to make sure you vote this way. That happens on a lot of the hot button issues that we talk about, not necessarily on smaller issues that affect communities on a local basis, for example. The second way they make up their mind is through constituents. It's hearing voices from their constituents. And this is where you can often get people who break from party lines. There was a famous Republican down in Louisiana who broke under the Obamacare ACA Act and voted for it in order to help pass it. And his reasoning was, my constituents over and over and over told me that, right? So those are all things to do. And then the third way they vote is conscience. And this is where you can get some pro-life Democrats out there or Republicans who will vote against their party's interests because they believe in foreign aid or things like that. So you can do that. So I'm seeing a couple things, whether they're supporting this one, there are legislators out there who only listen to themselves. Any tips on talking to legislators who believe that they're fully Catholic, even if they're not voting the way the church might vote? And I do need to put a disclaimer out. For Catholic Relief Services, for us, we are nonpartisan. We are a political organization because we're trying to influence politics, but we are nonpartisan. We want both Republicans and Democrats to vote with the worldview of the church, caring for people, helping the poor, the more marginalized. All right. Some of you are talking about extreme people or people who are Democrats who are always going to vote your way. Instead of thinking in a binary of either or, right? They're either for us or against us. It helps to think of people on a champion scale. Are they all the way over there on opposed where they will take to the floor and filibuster against your move? If that's the case, maybe we want to just move them to being opposed. They're going to vote for us, but they're not going to make a ruckus about it. Maybe that they can move to neutral. Maybe there's somebody who says, I vote your way all the time, Well, can we have them do more? Can we ask those politicians, will you talk to the leader of your party to make sure this is important? Will you talk to the committee chairs? One of the great things about being part of a national network is the ability to say, hey, Jim Jordan, our guy in Ohio, is really tough. Do we have any people in Ohio or any people other that can influence them? And so other people in the country can say, hey, do you know Jim Jordan, congressperson? Could you talk to Jim Jordan and tell him that this is really important, not only to his constituents, but you're hearing it around, the congressional halls, things like that. All right, so those are ways of thinking about beginning to look for things that we can ask them. So I'm hearing Lisa ask about Republican reps, even if we don't live in their district. Lisa, that's a much harder ask. What I typically say is if they happen to be a chair of a committee that's making a decision on an issue, then you could do that. Please continue to thank people who are voting your way. They need to know that they've got support in their districts for that, and keep pushing people who are voting the way that against you, because we want to maintain a relationship and begin to move them. So that's a couple ways of beginning to think about that idea of moving them. We want to get to know them. We found some things to do. So now I want to jump back to this slide about our role in the legislative process, right? I want you to think about at the top there, you'll look at some of the emails that are talked about, the emails and the correspondence. You'll see it's individualized, or we often use the personalized emails. That's one way you can change a form email to make it have more impact, okay? At our next step, I'm actually going to invite you guys to take action. This QR code will take you to CRS's latest action alert that we've got. So we are in this crisis. We are asking people to take action on this. I will post this link in the chat too, if you want to check on it on the chat. And it will take you to the action alert. You can also text advocate to 67768. And I strongly suspect our sister agencies across the country, CARE, World Vision, World Relief, are also doing similar things. So you can look at that. You can see it brings up an action alert, but here's the difference of making a form letter more effective. And this is really, really important. You can personalize the subject line and then personalize your message. If you have an opportunity to do that, your email will automatically stand out more than just a form letter. And so it matters more. Here's the thing. A lot of people get very nervous about writing to Congress, things like that. Some people do. And the reason is because they don't feel like they're experts on the issue. You don't have to be an expert on international aid to know that helping people matters. What are the values that you bring to it? Why is what matters to your congressman? They want to hear stories from you about why it matters, why you believe it's important. I talk about this a lot, that the whys differ among us. I might have spent a career in the military, and my why on international aid has more to do with securing stability around the world, because that's a smart and prudent thing to do for America for national security. I might come out of a business background and say, the more developed countries around the world mean the more trade partners we have. By lifting other countries up, we increase our opportunity to do business with them. And our why may be a very moral why. It is immoral and evil to let people die when we don't have to, right? Whatever your why is, I'm going to encourage you to personalize it. Hoping that you have it up. You've got the link there. Your next challenge, should you accept it, and this message will self-destruct in 30 seconds. No, I'm only kidding. Do your action alerts. That's great. But then tomorrow, I want you to visit your Member of Congress website and submit a letter through their system. It can be on anything that you care about. I'm going to just real quick, I'm going to do this with so I can show you guys how you can find it. I'm going to go to the Google, and my representative is Chris Van Hollen. So I will just type in Van Hollen. Click Van Hollen. Here's this senator. Look, there's a contact page right there. I can click on that. Boom. I can email my senator right there. I can share my opinion with him. He's going to give me all this stuff. He's going to want me to do it, and I can do this. If I'm not good at writing stuff down, I sometimes take form letters that I've gotten, form emails from other action agencies that I support. I support a lot of causes. I will actually cut and paste a lot of their language into one of these messages so it's coming through their system. That will make it more impactful, and I don't have to sound like I came up with all the language on my own. Because I don't know about you, but spending 15, 20 minutes to write an email when I can cut and paste something for 5 minutes makes it a little bit easier. So you've taken some action tonight, hopefully through the form email that we shared. I want to encourage you tomorrow to make your voices heard by going onto their websites. And then the next way to do that is by making ChatGPT is a great help. Yes, it is. ChatGPT here, I care about this. There's probably some environmental ethical issues about ChatGPT that we won't get in here today about how we will all be slaves to them. But I always thank ChatGPT after I use it so that the robot overlords treat me nice when they take over. All right, so the next thing I want to do after sending an email is I want to make a call to my member of Congress. This is pretty straightforward and actually has more impact than a letter writing. By the way, you can send an actual physical letter to your member of Congress today, but it takes a long time to get there, and so it is not very effective. If you're writing about an issue to get them thinking about something for the next congressional session, things like that, how you feel, that's fine. But if you're trying to write about an urgent message, email is a much better way to get through. So phone calling. You want to identify yourself as a constituent. You want to do a summary of the issue and the ask. You want to share a personal story and you want to thank them. I like to say, I'd like to hear back from you. To just try and get bold today, I'm actually going to try and do a call right now with my member of Congress. He is a new congressman. I probably should have put his phone number in before I so I could just hit redial. But I'm going to put it on speakerphone so y'all can hear. And I'm going to call him about this issue that's happening right now. I tried to do this at a live training the other day and I misdialed and got an interior design company.
You've reached the office of Congressman Johnny Olszewski of Maryland's 2nd District.
Can you guys hear that?
I'm unable to take your call right now, but please leave a detailed message, including your
I'm
callback
hoping
number,
you can.
and we
I
will
can't see
respond
you.
as soon as possible. Thanks and have a great day.
Okay. I would say, hi, my name is Chris West. I am a constituent living in Reisterstown, Maryland, in the 2nd District. I'm calling today to ask Congressman O to please urge the administration to halt and reverse the termination of all active foreign assistance programs immediately and resume the distribution of the congressionally appropriated foreign assistance funds. Additionally, I really would like my congressman to reach out to Congressman Jeffries, who's the head of the Democrats, to let his leadership know how important this is to him and to his constituents. You can reach me at 410-949-7057. Again, my name is Chris West. Personally, I've been able to see life-saving interventions that USAID has done in several countries around the world. It's a devastating decision, and the overall humanitarian aid budget is a minuscule amount. So please, please fight to restore it. Thank you very much. Here's the other secret. Calling after hours and getting their voicemail is a great way to do it because you're less pressured and they don't ask questions. So if you're nervous, leaving a voicemail is good. Writing it down helps. All right, we got about 15 minutes.